Let's talk about the Bengals. They have the third easiest strength of schedule heading into the season. Every other team in their division changed coaches. Is it Super Bowl or bust for Joe Burrow?
Absolutely. If not now, then when? I mean, you saw how active the Bengals were in free agency and the draft and addressing the defense. That's been the area that's been a nuisance to the Cincinnati Bengals. And if Joe Burrow stays healthy, this is a team that absolutely should contend in the AFC.
Nuisance is an excellent choice of words.
Yeah. So this is actually a fairly simple topic for me to break down. I previously minimized the importance of strength of schedule for plenty of teams and explained my reasoning in detail. I still stand behind everything I said. And what I'm about to say might sound like it contradicts that, but hopefully I'll lay it out in a way that comes across clearly. For whatever reason, whether it's been due to injuries, struggles on defense, problems along the offensive line, or even coaching issues, the Bengals haven't exactly been the most resilient group. They haven't shown that gritty, bounce-back quality consistently. We've seen them get off to shaky starts, right? We've seen questionable losses, and so on and so forth. But no matter how a given season is going, as long as Joe Burrow is under center and the roster is reasonably healthy, meaning the key players you expect to see on game day are actually out there, then even when things don't break their way, the Bengals show up ready to work. Even in their defeats. Take their loss to Kansas City in 2024, both matchups against Baltimore that same year, the loss to Buffalo in 2025, or that snowy game. I think it was a snow game, if I remember correctly. In all those situations, they're prepared to fight. They're ready to go toe-to-toe, and they function as a legitimate team. Because here's my philosophy on this, I've always said, look, if you're a truly great team, then you're a great team. And if that's the case, the final strength of schedule numbers don't really matter all that much. However, given the way Cincinnati has performed in recent years, they stand out among all the teams I believe could genuinely benefit from a favorable strength of schedule. Usually, a softer schedule might artificially inflate how good a mediocre team looks. But I think the Cincinnati Bengals are a bit of an exception to that rule. Let me put it this way. I remember a couple of years ago, actually, it was just last season, people were saying about the Dallas Cowboys, oh, if they make the playoffs, they'll be the most dangerous team out there. Then in 2024, folks started having that same conversation about the Bengals. You'd hear things like, do the Chiefs want to avoid the Bengals? And so on. Everyone kind of laughed at that notion, whether you should feel that way or not, debate. And for my part, I said, no way, not for the Cowboys in 2025. I never felt that way about them. But for the Bengals? Yes, absolutely. Without question. I truly believe that given the roster Cincinnati has assembled and the kind of team they've proven to be, if they can just sneak into the postseason, they become an absolute, unqualified threat. I don't care how the regular season unfolded. I don't care what their final win-loss record ends up being. I don't care how many ups and downs, twists and turns, or dramatic storylines have come and gone. Once it's playoff time, you absolutely, positively do not want to face Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. You just don't want that matchup. It doesn't matter to me if their defense is still surrendering an average of 30 points per game. Because at any given moment, Joe Burrow can completely and utterly light you up. And if there's any team, any quarterback, capable of rattling off 3 or 4 consecutive victories when it matters most, it's the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow. So, when we talk about strength of schedule here, and again, I haven't dug deeply into what truly constitutes a strength of schedule ranking. Like, what does the 18th rated schedule actually mean? My suspicion is that it's one of those metrics where the difference between having the hardest schedule and the easiest is only a couple of games. I think it's much narrower than it appears at first glance. In years past, a weak schedule meant something like, oh, wow, you're playing the Jets, the Panthers, and a few other lower-tier teams, and everyone would say, okay, that's a lot of easy games on your slate. I don't necessarily think that's the case right now, based purely on my own view of how the NFL is currently structured in terms of the distribution of team quality across the league. So I do think that if the strength of schedule projections hold up, and the Bengals indeed have an easier path, then that puts them in an incredibly strong position, one where they could be absolute, bona fide front-runners at the top of the AFC. Let's get after it, let's go. Now, to be clear, I think in theory, and I've mentioned this to you all before, I am more optimistic about the Bengals right now than I have been in almost any previous season. So I'm extremely excited to see how this all plays out. But I still factor in that the Bengals might need a little bit of help along the way. There are other teams where I simply say strength of schedule doesn't matter. No excuses. You're either great or you're not. For the Los Angeles Rams, I don't care what their strength of schedule is. Are you an elite team? Are you a top team in the NFL? Yes or no? I don't want to hear about strength of schedule. For the Bengals, though, I leave that door open. I do care a little bit more, and it genuinely opens up possibilities. And I truly believe that when you're a quality team, when you're well organized, and you have at bare minimum a great offense, then sure, a favorable strength of schedule can really work in your favor. Now, maybe that means winning your division. Maybe that means earning a home field advantage game. You're in the playoffs, period. You're in a position to do damage. You're absolutely in a position to do serious harm. There are certain teams and certain quarterbacks, and I'll wrap up here, that can find themselves in the postseason, and you kind of just think, okay, maybe they could be competitive, maybe they could win one playoff game. We all know those kinds of teams. Take the Carolina Panthers last year. I don't think many people had them winning a Super Bowl. But people thought, okay, maybe they could beat the Rams, that would be an interesting wildcard round, they're at home, they already beat the Rams once. So you thought, alright, this is somewhat interesting. Same thing with a team like the Steelers. Let me think of other recent examples, the 49ers, and so on. So we see those teams where you say, hey, this could be kind of interesting, they get into the playoffs, what might happen? Can they get out of the wild card round? Can they be competitive in the divisional round? What's the story here? And I just think that ultimately, the takeaway about the Bengals, no matter what season it's been, honestly, is this: regardless of what their record looks like, regardless of how they've appeared on the field, given the quality of their roster and the offense they've managed to field over these past several years, even if they shared identical characteristics with some of those other teams where you'd say, oh yeah, that'd be cool, maybe they can win a wild card game, maybe be competitive in the divisional round, they're in a completely different category. To me, they are automatically positioned as absolute Super Bowl contenders, as in, they are right there in the mix for the championship. I don't have to say, well, I don't know, because they'd have to go through the Chiefs, the Bills, or whoever else you want to name. It's simply this: if anyone is going to be able to torch those teams, if anyone is going to be to pull off a win in the final 2 minutes and 35 seconds of a game, it's going to be Joe Burrow and the Bengals. I still have that confidence. I still have that faith. I still feel that threat and that danger. Even though clearly it hasn't worked out for them over the last few years, I'm not going to waver from that position, unlike, say, how I looked at the Pittsburgh Steelers last season, or how I looked at the Carolina Panthers. Not even close, right? Not even in the same ballpark. So again, to really hammer home this comparison, the Panthers made the playoffs, and the Bengals did not. But if the Bengals had made the playoffs, I would have had 100% more confidence that they would win multiple postseason games than I had in the Carolina Panthers. And yet, Carolina actually got in, and Cincinnati stayed home. And that line between them? It's not a thin line. It's thick. It's right down the middle, clear as day. That is the power the Bengals possess. That is the position they occupy. So if they can string together wins, if they can take advantage of a lighter schedule, they could become, absolutely, in the blink of an eye, a top 1 or top 2 team in the entire NFL. Without any doubt, we're talking playoffs, home field advantage, and then it's okay, baby, let's go. Especially if they lock up a top seed. I haven't examined the schedule closely yet, but if they get the number 1 seed and a first-round bye, then they only need to win one game to reach the AFC Championship. That is incredibly threatening and incredibly frightening. Even if someone says, well, the Bengals only got there because they had an easy schedule, right? Similar to what people used to say about the New England Patriots. And then someone else says, really, the better team is actually the Broncos or the Jaguars. I'm just making up examples here. And my response is simply, it doesn't matter. Yes, maybe in past seasons or with past teams we could say, yeah, that team clearly benefited from the schedule. It still doesn't matter. You still have to go through Joe Burrow right now. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. I would totally push back against anyone who says otherwise. And it would be an interesting conversation to have, a really interesting conversation. But I think there are certain exceptions to the rules and certain nuances to consider. And to me, that's exactly where the Cincinnati Bengals stand with Joe Burrow. So, it's simple. Joe Burrow and the Bengals should be contenders in the AFC. If not now, then when? Combine that with the strength of schedule, and it's like, they are contenders. Boom. Done. Lock it down. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you all think about the Cincinnati Bengals? Do you see what I'm saying in terms of them really being the definition of a team where, as long as they get a chance, then they have a huge chance? It's a bigger opportunity than some of the other teams that might be in a similar situation to them. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single comment, whether you agree with me or disagree. Either way, let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some healthy arguments. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you be part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing that. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, it really helps with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.